Hello, my name is Mary.
My name's Luke.
And welcome to Totally Schway Flip Side, a podcast about whatever the hell I want it to be about.
But what's it about currently?
It is about Caped Crusader. And today, in this episode, we are going to be talking about episode 4, where we get a quick, lovely introduction to Harley Quinn. We get to talk about Firebug, and we get to talk about what a nuisance Flask and Bullock are.
Yeah, Detective Flask and Bullock are really awful, and we'll get into that.
Yeah. So, I have one question for you, Luke.
Shoot.
What do you think of the Batman?
So yeah, it's always interesting when you open with these Vox Populi things. I nearly said Vox Pox then, because that's what I used to call it when I was being smart. So you've got news reporter Jack Ryder, as he's named in the credits, played by, was it Corey Burton, who should be familiar to DC Animated Universe fans as the voice of Brainiac and several others. And the people on the streets are not a big fan of Batman after they saw the photos.
The Batman.
Yes. What do you think of the Batman? Yeah, when they saw photos of him beating up Flash and Bullock in the newspaper, and these were pictures taken by Eel O'Brien, and Batman had given his consent for them to be published. He said he didn't care what people thought of him, so long as it got Catwoman convicted. And it's funny that the people are just generally against him, and you see Mayor Jessup saying that he's putting together a task force to take down Batman. And who did they put in charge of this task force, Mary?
The one, the only, Renee Montoya.
Yes, yeah, and that puts a bee in the bonnet of Bullock and Flash, doesn't it?
Gordon put her in charge.
Yeah. Of course, they think they should be in charge because they're such wonderful cops. They're so great that they called Penguin and tipped her off that her son was testifying against her. They attempted to murder Selena Kyle. They ignored Renee Montoya's call for backup. In fact, they responded to it so that no one else was assigned, and then they took their sweet time eating a sandwich.
Yeah, I need to mention something real quick. Is I used to call it toothpaste,
right?
Or two-faced, and now I keep saying Bullock and Flask, but it's not Flask, and I know that. So if I accidentally say that, put how many times I do that in the comments.
Give this video 1 thumbs up for every time she says Flask.
Yeah, I just thought that was really funny. But yeah, they are not good.
No.
At all. Renee is the best cop that, other than Gordon. Well, I think Renee would be, she'd kick ass even if Gordon wasn't there. But they are not good cops. No,
and later events of this episode show how industrious Montoya is, but also how decent Commissioner Gordon is.
Yeah, and that is such a great word to use for Commissioner Gordon. Decent.
Yeah. And
a lot of people think that is like a middle word, if you will. It's not. Decent is great. Being a decent human being is what we should all strive to be. But Gordon, I think, is just a little bit better than the rest of us.
Well, yes, you're quite. Yeah, he believes in Montoya.
Yeah, he's a good, decent person. Sorry for interrupting me, but a good, decent person.
Yeah, and he sees through Flash and Bullock's BS, and he doesn't want them anywhere near leadership on this important task. There is one really, actually no, let's talk about what the task force actually does and how they plan to catch Batman.
Yeah.
So they set up a series of fake assaults and muggings and stuff, with the cops acting the part of both the perpetrator and the victim, going, "Oh, help, I wish some big strong Batman would come and help me.
Oh, help."
Yeah, but Batman's wise to them. He's looking at the crimes taking place from the rooftops. He sees the police in their unmarked cars across the street. He knows who they all are. And the funny thing is, it's because he's been visiting their strike force room at night while no one else is there. And Commissioner Gordon stays late one night and goes to get himself a cup of coffee and walks past the strike force room, and he sees Batman in there, and they're just like, "Oh!" it's such a comical scene. Batman's just kind of standing there rifling through their papers, and Commissioner Gordon's standing in the doorway in complete shock. And obviously he pulls his gun and goes, freeze, and there's a chase. But they can't believe the audacity of Batman to just come after their strike force and see who they are and see all of their plans.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it's very important to the episode. But this is also the episode where Gordon realizes that the Batman isn't a vindictive Batman. Or you know what I mean.
Yeah, he's not a villain.
Yeah.
He is actually sincere and he is trying to help. One thing I just wanted to mention before...
It goes on to the villain of the episode.
Yeah, I think Bullock and Flass are the villain of this episode. But, the costume villain, yes. Yeah. One thing I just wanted to mention before we move to that is on the wall, on their board of the Batman, Bat-Man, as he was referred to in Detective Comics 27 when he first appeared, before it became one word. They've got a picture of Batman, like an artist's rendition of him, and it's from Batman #1 from his one-page origin story. Now that panel of Batman is considered like a controversial image because there are suggestions that Bob Kane traced that image over someone else's work and just added Batman ears and a cape to it. But still, it's a very recognisable early Batman image. Well, I mean, let's not get into Bob Kane, but basically he signed a very cushy deal with National Comics, who would go on to become DC Comics later on. And what he did is then he paid people to draw stuff for him, and then he would just put his signature on there. There's also the fact that a lot of the stuff that people like the most about Batman, like the costume and the Batmobile and the Batcave, etc., was all stuff that was devised by his writing partner, Bill Finger. But he took all the credit for it. But anyway,
that's not good tea.
No, it's not good at all. It's very terrible. And whenever I mention, I remember reading out a quote from Bruce Timm where he described Caped Crusader's Batman as being like Bob Kane's Batman. The amount of people going in there going, "Oh, you got that wrong. It's Bill Finger." I'm like, listen, guys, it's a quote. I was quoting someone. I know who Bill Finger is. Jesus Christ. Anyway,
superstar.
Yeah, Bill Finger, superstar.
The superstar we all needed.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Finger's story is quite a sad one because he died quite young and fairly poor. And Bob Kane only gave him credit after he died, which not great. But then after Bob Kane died, they updated the credits to include Bill Finger's name.
You know what? We're going to have an episode of Bob Kane one day.
Oh, I don't want to be negative. I try not to be negative. Do you remember when we went to that gallery and they had a print of Bob Kane's artwork that Bob Kane had hand-signed and they tried to sell it to me?
The one in Essex?
Yeah. And I just went, no. Bob Kane was a shuckster. I'm not interested.
I don't remember that.
Oh, right.
But I know you said something, but I think I was looking at something like their prints or something.
Yeah. And they were like, okay.
Yeah. They were like, you're buying this other stuff, but
Yeah. But anyway, that's a massive tangent. What were we talking? So we were talking about, so Batman goes into the Strike Force's office.
We're talking about what was on the wall.
Yeah. And he's pilfering their papers. Commissioner Gordon chases him down. Batman's tactics of evading their traps is going too well. They're frustrated, so the police stage a fake robbery with fake bullets, and Batman gets involved. Then they switch to real bullets and start shooting at him. That still doesn't work because he gets away with his Batmobile and rams through their police barricade with ease.
Of course. With the turbo speed.
Now, this is where Bullock and Flass come in. So we should actually mention that Harley Quinn, this is the thing you wanted to bring up, so perhaps you can talk about Harley Quinn.
So, Harley Quinn was introduced in the last episode as the psychiatrist. I believe it's psychiatrist. It is psychiatrist, not psychoanalyst or whatever. Let's call it psychiatrist.
She's a shrink.
Yeah. She was introduced in the last episode, and in this episode, the GCPD are having her create a profile for the Batman. And we start to see a relationship there. And you don't see too much of Harley in this episode.
No.
But it's nice that she's one of those characters that are in several episodes where you get little pieces of her, and then when you get her big episode, it's like a puzzle. You're putting all those things, and every little thing that she does makes sense.
Yeah, so Harley Quinn was introduced to them by Barbara Gordon, and Barbara Gordon had used her in some of her cases. And as you said, she's putting together a psychological profile for Batman. And she says these key words: Batman seems to respond to other costumed people. So if you want to really get him, you need a costume nut job. Which, is just casual information shared with most of the police, but Bullock and Flass have an idea.
Yeah, they take it to the extreme. And this is when we meet Firebug.
Or Firefly, as they keep calling him, and he keeps trying to correct them, going, no, it's Firebug, I'm Firebug.
Yeah, I like the name Firebug.
Yeah, it's a softer name than Firefly, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just like I'm talking about Junebug. Firebug.
The way Firebug is portrayed is without his costume and his flamethrowers. He's very meek, he's very small, he's a little man.
Yeah.
And he just kind of sits there quietly in the corner, looking forlorn and sad, because he thinks... Now, he's very obviously mentally unwell, because he thinks that by burning people, you'll bring them happiness and they will acknowledge the truth. When he looks at the world, he dreams about people being on fire, but they're not running around in pain and agony.
No,
they're playing happily. He thinks he's doing people a favour by doing this.
They're becoming one with the flame, and the flame is roaring with happiness, desire, everything that is good in the world.
Yes, yeah. So...
I think this story... I think you mentioned it earlier. The villains of this episode are Bullock and Flass.
Yes.
And I think one of the victims, I know he's a villain, but one of the victims of this episode is Firebug.
Yeah, he absolutely is a victim. Because they take him, they say that they're taking him to Arkham to get an assessment.
Yeah.
When really what they're doing is they are weaponizing him. They are unleashing him on Gotham to trap Batman. And they don't plan on arresting Batman. They plan on shooting and killing Batman because he beat them up and made them look bad. It's all about their ego. And their egos, I should say. And, there is quite an amusing scene where they're like, oh, wouldn't it be a shame if someone got in the back of the trunk there with the broken lock and got a hold of Firebug's costume? That would be a terrible shame, wouldn't it? And, the engine's playing up. We'd better go and investigate.
Yeah, and Firebug's in the back seat the entire time. No handcuffs. Yeah. Just no seatbelt, nothing. Just able to get back there and get his suit. Yeah.
And you can tell that he is, how can you phrase this, mentally deficient, because he can't tell that that's what they want him to do. He thinks he's being sneaky when he climbs out of the open window and loudly opens the trunk of the car and runs off with the costume. That's exactly what they wanted him to do.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to something I said earlier.
Yeah, sure.
And that is the Gordon and Batman relationship. You start to see that kind of forming in this episode, and you see that Gordon can see why Batman is doing this.
Yeah.
He doesn't really want him to do it the way that he's doing it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But he can see, because they help. What Firebug does is he sets fire to this old building that used to be part of Gordon's. What did he say? His beat. Yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, it's the poor neighborhood. It's really densely populated with unsafe buildings.
Yeah, and he sets it on fire. And there's loads of kids in there.
Yeah.
And Gordon runs in there, obviously, and Batman's in there. He's trying to save people, and then they see each other. And I believe Batman has 2 kids, one in each arm.
Yeah, so Gordon pulls a gun on him from behind, and Batman turns around and he's holding 2 children. Yeah. And Batman says to him, there's more inside.
Yeah.
Gordon says, to hell with this, let's get those kids out.
Yeah. Because he's decent and good. He's thinking about other people before himself.
Yeah.
Unlike BNF.
BNF.
Yes. That's what I'm going to start calling him.
BNF. Sounds like a discount supermarket.
Yeah.
Going down B&F, get some...
Soda,
yes. I was going to say cheap mozzarella, but I don't know why.
I don't know. No, Bullock and Flass are not good and decent, and they only think about themselves and how they can get ahead and what they are going to do to get ahead, whether that's good or bad. Most of the time, not good.
Yeah, and the key thing is they're not just endangering the residents of their area, they're endangering all the cops that come to arrest Batman. All of their colleagues that come in, and Batman beats the crap out of them and leaves them there. I mean, they do escape, of course, and Batman directs people to safety.
Yeah.
But they don't care. And it's that scene where Bullock and Flass catch up with Firebug, and he's just looking out the window.
Oh, this is...
And he turns around to them and, they say, oh, you guess they weren't joking, Firebug. You really are a dangerous man.
This scene is very important to the entire series.
Yes.
And the reason I'm saying this is because this is not a scene you would have seen in Batman the Animated Series.
No.
This shows that there's no, insinuating, there's no, did they, didn't they could have, they couldn't have, whatever. They did, and they showed Firebug's awful death.
Yeah, and it's not gratuitous, though.
No,
because...
awful as in the reason they're
understand.
doing it, and the fact that you actually get, you actually see the death.
Yeah, so Flass says, we can't take you in because you would squeal on us. You tell them what really happened. So Bullock pulls out his gun, shoots Firebug, and he falls out of the window. They're like 5-6 stories up, and Firebug falls to the pavement, dead. Yeah. And Eel O'Brien is there, takes a picture of the dead Firebug, looks up at the window, takes a picture of Bullock standing there in the window with his gun. Now, from the outside, it looks like they took out a dangerous criminal, but Firebug had said to them, he says to them that without the fuel, my flamethrowers are useless, so I surrender.
Yeah,
he had his hands up.
That's one of the awful things.
Yeah. And they didn't care. They just shot him. And they killed him to better themselves, in a way, to better their reputation. Their egos were bruised after being beaten up by Batman, so they lashed out and took it out on this small, defenseless weirdo.
That needed to be in a psychiatric hospital.
Yes, he was dangerous, and he did do bad things.
Yes, but there's a difference between them killing him and them taking him to, Arkham or something.
Yeah.
And that is awful. There's no way around that. And going back to what I said, this would never have been in any of the other DCAU.
Yeah, probably not. Maybe
Batman oriented.
Yeah, not BTAS or New Batman Adventures. Maybe Justice League Unlimited. You might have potentially, because that was 10 years later. That was the early 2000s. That still might have been a bit too much. I think
it would have been too. It's not just the scene itself; it's the actions of the people in the scene.
Yeah,
because this is not a kids show. This was not written for kids. I think this was written for the kids that were kids back then, and now they're adults now. So we're a little bit more grown up, and we can take a little bit more. And this scene here, as soon as I saw it, I actually felt like my heart go into my gut, because I was like, I'm an adult now. I know that's a bit of funny put in there, but it's true. And it's just so, when you see that, you're like, oh man, Bullock's not going to be good at all in this, because he can't come back from that.
No.
He can't. And that is something that I thought, as soon as I saw it, was like, because at first you're thinking, oh, Bullock's just, he can turn around. It can turn around. He's not done something too bad, whatever. But he has. He cannot turn from this.
If I remember rightly, it was Flass that shot Catwoman in the leg and was going to kill her, wasn't it?
I believe so.
I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments.
I think it was.
But at this point...
I mean, they were both doing it.
Yeah, they were both doing it, but Flass was the one with the gun pulling the trigger.
There's two different points. There's that pulling the trigger and shooting her leg, and then there's the point where Firebug goes out the window, and you know who does both of those events, and neither of them can turn back from that. Because they are down dirty cops. Yeah,
and Flass has always and only ever been a dirty cop. He's never been a beloved character. Harvey Bullock, meanwhile, was a rough cop. He was an asshole.
But he was a good cop.
But he, at his core, he was a good cop. He got good results. He bent the rules. He didn't break them. Whereas this Bullock breaks the rules flagrantly and without remorse.
Yeah. And when he's found out about something, it's not, oh, I'm so sorry about this. It's not, I didn't do that. How are you going to prove that?
Yeah, so when Commissioner Gordon takes them both into his office and tells them he knows what they did and that he's going to have their badges, they deny it. They go, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Guess you didn't see the papers.
Yeah, and then if he's the commissioner, the mayor?
Yeah, the mayor calls.
The mayor calls and says, give them anything they want, or something along those lines.
Yeah, they should be running the task force. They got results. They took out the pyromaniac.
Yeah, so do you want to mention anything about Gotham Central?
Oh, yeah, actually, yeah. I'm glad you made that note. So one of the things... So Gotham Central was a comic book in the early 2000s written by Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker. If those names sound familiar,
We love them.
Ed Brubaker is the head writer on this show, and Greg Rucka wrote the Clayface episode. It was all about... It was like a procedural crime drama, but set in Gotham City. Batman was virtually never in it, and when he was in it, he was mostly in the shadows, or, just out of the panel where you couldn't really see him. And it was about the police in Gotham. Firebug was in one of those stories, actually. But the reason I bring it up is that a couple of the characters from Gotham Central are in this show. There's Detective Cohen, Driver, Corrigan. If anyone that knows their DC superheroes will know the name Jim Corrigan, I'm sure, because Jim Corrigan becomes the Spectre. There's also a Jones in there as well, and I don't think that's Martian Manhunter in disguise. I think that is a different Detective Jones.
You mean Martian Manhunter isn't the only person
with
or
the name
character
Jones
to have the last name of Jones?
I know, it's hard to believe, isn't it? But there is more than one of them. And I thought that was really neat. Gotham Central is one of my favourite comics, and it's one of the reasons why I was so looking forward to this show. And seeing these characters on screen is great. Some of them are a bit different. Driver was like one of the main characters in Gotham Central, and he was quite gruff and competent. And Driver in this show is like, he's okay, but seems like a bit of a goof in some regards. But yes, if you read Gotham Central and you know Detective Corrigan's story, then... Well, you've got a preview for upcoming episodes. But, I just thought that was worth mentioning, and I'm glad you wrote that down because I completely forgot about it. But basically what happens after the mayor's phone call is Montoya's taken off lead of this Batman strike force, and Bullock and Flass are put in place.
The man taking down the woman.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is interesting to note that the Flass and Bullock... don't like Montoya. Not necessarily for any good reason. It's just because she's a good cop and they are not.
Yeah.
And they sometimes make like crappy remarks about her being a woman and like it's not really her place to be in the squadron. But she's a better cop than they are.
Oh yeah.
She's much better than they are. She practically took out Clayface by herself. Practically. All right, Batman helped, but she rescued the actress Yvonne. I've forgotten her surname. But yeah, I think you're right, Mary. The big villains of this episode are Bullock and Flass, and we see more of their villainy throughout the series.
There's something to be said about weaponizing mentally unwell people.
Yeah.
And this happens a lot in the real world too, where, it's not just dirty cops. It's just what happens to a weapon when it doesn't work anymore.
Gets dismantled.
Yeah. And that's, I grew up in a military town where I grew up by an Air Force base. Luckily, I met some really great people that worked in the military, and I never had any issues with that because at one point I wanted to be in the military. But they would always talk about not needing certain weapons anymore. And you always knew when they were talking about it, they weren't just talking about guns. They were talking about people as well. And I'm not saying, oh, they're going to kill somebody or whatever.
No.
I'm just saying that sometimes weapons aren't just guns or knives or anything. And a lot of those people that I met, and some of them are family members, will say, we weaponize things that we don't need to. And I feel that came back to me when I was watching this episode, because they were using Firebug. Yes, violent, needs to be locked away in a hospital somewhere.
Yeah.
But that does not mean they need to be weaponized. Just like sometimes our words are weaponized against us when we're saying really nice things. But because we're saying nice things about something else, people are like, well, what about this? You don't say this, so that must mean you hate this. And yeah, I'm going on a tangent now, but...
it's relevant. The thing I wanted to mention as well is that, yes, Firebug did burn those buildings down, but it was Bullock and Flass that gave him the weaponry and pointed him at them. They are just as guilty as anyone else. And this kind of feels like commentary about some elements of the press that are very quick to praise murderous people if they feel like the target was deserving of the death, when really you shouldn't be shooting and killing anyone. In general, broadly speaking, maybe if it's a life or death situation, you've got a split second to choose between them being alive and you being alive, or them being alive and some innocent bystander being alive. That's a different situation. Yeah. But an unarmed, powerless, weak little man who was just murdered to gain them some brownie points with the press. It's despicable. It is,
and it goes to show that these characters cannot turn back.
No.
After you do something like this, I can't see a character being redeemed. Like they don't have a redemption arc. It is down from here, and they can only get worse.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. And I'm happy that we get a different Bullock. I'm not necessarily happy that it's bad Bullock, but I'm not mad at it. I know that sounds like contradictive, but I'm not mad at it because it's a refreshing take on a character that was accidentally wholesome, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Accidentally wholesome in the last series they were a big part of.
Yeah.
And when season 2 comes out, I'm really looking forward to see what they do with BNF.
Yeah. And it's important to note as well that you may not like what they've done with Harvey Bullock, but it doesn't change the Harvey Bullock that you do like. He does still exist. There's no, it doesn't like magically erase it. Like none of that counts anymore. Of course it does. Of course it does. Then it's not like this show existing means someone's going to come around your house and stamp on your DVDs and your Blu-rays and, delete your Amazon account where you bought them on Prime Video or whatever. You've still got those. And if you don't like this Bullock, then you're not supposed to like him. They've done their job correctly.
It's like, how many renditions of Alice in Wonderland have there been? So
Loads.
Many. So why can't we do that with characters that we know in a different story? I love the fact that there are multiple Batmans out there through the TV series, the movies, the animated movies, all of that. Because, and listen to me guys and gals and them and theys, we are all different. But let me tell you this, in all of those movies, whether it's a Ninja Batman, whether it is Gotham's Finest Batman, there is a Batman for you.
Yeah. Even Victorian Batman.
Oh, yes, I forgot about Victorian Batman. I think there is a Batman for everyone. And with those different Batman stories, sometimes the characters are a little bit different or completely different. And that's okay because it's a fictional program.
Yeah, and there's no point in doing exactly the same thing slavishly every single time.
How boring.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you already know exactly what's going to happen, exactly how people are going to act, what's the point in watching it?
And it gives such a great opportunity for different writers, even some of the same writers, different opportunities to tell stories that they might wanted. I can't even speak because I'm so excited about it. But they might have wanted to tell in the 90s or the 2000s, but because of censorship or, tape and this and that, they weren't able to. But now they're able to tell the story they want to, but they want to tell it with this character rather than this character, or they want a completely different storyline for this character. Just think of that awesome opportunity that you get for a new character, or a new storyline for a character.
Yeah.
It's just awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I really liked this episode. It was very bleak, but I thought it was very enlightening.
Yes.
Illuminating, that's what I should say.
Yeah. Especially the, Renee, Gordon, and Batman.
Yeah.
You don't see an awful lot of Bruce in this. You do see Bruce, but not as much as, Batman. Because this is a Batman story.
Yeah.
But yeah, we see who the real villains are.
Yeah.
Now, on the next episode, little spoiler alert, but two women kiss.
Oh no, call the police.
It happens to be one of my...
She is the police!
It happens to be one of my favorite episodes, and not just because of that. So... thank you so much for listening to this, and we will catch you on the next episode. Love you, bye.